for videos of the views. I stayed up all night. Oh, I'll show y'all a sunrise.
In this scene of the hit ABC TV show Alaska Daily, a young white woman from Texas falls off the back of a cruise ship. The media goes crazy after the selfie video of her fall goes viral. Meantime, in the newsroom of the fictional newspaper called the Alaska Daily,
can you cover the girl who disappeared from the cruise ship?
Why a missing young white woman
Did you hear about Jay
gets
Jacobs?
all the coverage,
She's a Yupik
while
woman
several
went
missing
missing 2 days
Native
ago.
Alaskan
No, I
women
didn't hear
get
about
no
her.
coverage
She
at
met
all.
with friends at Russian Patatsky Park. She was feeling sick, left, and never made it home. I'm covering this on top of Gloria. Give it to the rookie.
You're listening to the Ovis Podcast with Tracy Grant.
Welcome, everyone, to the Ovis Podcast. I'm Tracy Grant, the chief correspondent for Ovis. We at Ovis are building the future of news. Our mission is to end fake news by incentivizing the truth. Our topic today, missing white woman syndrome. A look at how the corporate media's obsession with ratings and clicks leaves people of color, indigenous people, even white men on the cutting room floor. In this scene, one brave reporter questions her editors about their decision to cover the woman who fell off the cruise ship.
Does this story reek of missing white woman syndrome?
Perhaps, but it's eyeballs. The entire country's watching.
Yeah, but Jade Jacob disappeared 2 days ago, and you don't see her face all over the news.
As you know, we can't not tell the Henley story.
Okay, well, can we split up our manpower a little bit and not feed the beast?
She's not wrong. Henley's getting a lot of coverage. You should have seen the turnout at the presser.
As a longtime journalist who has worked in newspapers and television stations from Georgia to California, I can personally tell you that scene you just saw plays out in newsrooms all the time. The managers have to decide, do they cover the missing white woman or someone else who's missing? And most times they go with the story they believe will get them the most ratings and clicks at the expense of everyone else. Linton Johnson created Ovis to give the power of story selection back to the people. He joins us to show us the impact that these decisions have on everyday people like you.
Okay, Tracy, thank you very much. We've got two great guests today. Our first guest is Larry Griffey. He's an avid news consumer and a Pioneer Club member. The Pioneer Club, by the way, is a special club reserved exclusively for those who are willing to help the Ovis community in fake news and incentivize truth-telling. And our second guest is one of our favorite guests because he's always on Ovis, Chief Development Officer Dominic Thomas. He's also an avid news consumer. So, guys, you just saw this clip, right? This is where they're trying to split their manpower between covering the white girl and the missing Native girl. What I find interesting is in this story, the white woman is from Texas, and this is happening in Alaska, and Alaska is spending all of its resources from a woman from Texas versus the missing person who pays their taxes in Alaska, which, that's just a whole nother storyline. But anyway, I'm curious, Larry, what's your reaction to the scene that was just played?
They said exactly what I was thinking. It's in that moment. I'm just like, here we go again. It's just unfair. But then when they said it, it really hit me in the heart. And so I'm glad they said it. I'm glad they brought this point up. And so, yeah, that's just my reaction. And I think that it kind of happens for, like, in my opinion, this one major reason. But, from a people perspective, I think that people in general, like groups, we tend to favor people like us. Nothing wrong with it. It happens. We like who we like because they reflect parts of us. Normal thing. However, in my opinion, I think that news media kind of exploits that a little bit.
Yeah.
And takes advantage of that way people are and does some pretty interesting, maybe not so cool things with it.
Well, I think this is definitely a check on the media. It's not a check on white women. I have a lot of friends who I hang out with who happen to be white women, and if any one of them went missing, I would want the media to cover that story, right? I love them to death, and I want them to get coverage. But I also have many friends who are black women and white men, and they don't ever get the same amount of treatment. If any one of them went missing as well, I want the media to cover them equally. So this is not a check on white women; it's a check on the media. For me, why don't we have equal coverage? And for you, Dominic, my question is: do you think has anything to do, at least in your opinion, with the lack of diversity in newsrooms?
I don't know if it's a direct correlation with the composition of the ethnicities in the newsroom per se. I think it's much more along the lines of follow the money, right? It usually is that exact thing. Unfortunately, depending on where you are in the world, right? People are going to be glued to the TV if it's about something or someone they care about versus something or someone they don't care about so much. But I also think it represents, politics, right? Like we see this. It's always the classic. What do they say? Like, you could have. Well, we have had. Tens of thousands of black men, women, teenagers dying of drug overdoses and drug-related problems. But as soon as like the white kids started doing crystal meth, we had a drug problem. Right.
Right.
We didn't have one before that.
Right.
Now we do. Right. It's that. It's racist. It's like, but it's that institutional type racism, right? It's racism without thought almost. It's subconscious, which is scary in some ways, right? Maybe not as overtly malicious and premeditated as your dyed in the wool bigot, but it's more pervasive and it's almost normalized where like even minorities don't quite even recognize it. Like they're used to seeing this shit all the time, it just becomes it
sends a message that white women, white number one, is more important. And I remember kind of growing up just feeling valued less in society. All I saw were these stories of just white skin. And I even had some own personal, self-valuing issues relative to whiteness. And I thought I was less than. I wanted, and so it sends this message, this complicated message to the kids and folks who look kind of like me and others. And it's not right to give that fair treatment kind of just to one side, that just and fair treatment of a story to just one side.
Well, it's also interesting, like a newscast is 30 minutes long, right? So why couldn't they just do one story on, a missing white woman who deserves the story, who absolutely deserves that story, but then send the same amount of coverage to a missing, black male or Asian woman or something like that. What I find though is that because of ratings and clicks, it's like, well, let's just devote all the resources to the one story that we know we're going to get ratings on, and let's not take a risk at covering somebody else that may not be as representative as our audience is. But for me, the thing is, if you started covering that Asian woman, maybe more Asian people would watch. Maybe people of color, because they identify with anybody of color, regardless of whether it's their actual race, would also watch. And you'd raise that audience up too. I just feel like the media is too scared to even take that risk. Your thoughts, Dominic?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. I mean, I think the media in this country's been particularly conservative for a while, and I'm not saying necessarily in like political thought, but in the way they resisted the digital revolution for so long, right? They were some of the last people that kind of like, it felt like news and Hollywood were like the last people to the table, maybe medicine. So they're kind of notoriously conservative, notoriously, do it the way it's always been done kind of thing. But I think this is just a much bigger problem than we give it credit for, and that is, speaking of Larry's comments, like if I'm to sit here or be in a personal situation with someone and spit out a racial slur, right? It's shitty behavior by me. There's no excuses, but that individual's like core self-esteem's not going to be damaged, right? They're not going to suddenly start questioning their self-worth per se. They're either going to smack me in the face or walk away, or call me an asshole or whatever it is. But but this kind of thing, like, Larry's talking about that, and I see the little kid watching the TV saying, "There's no one like me."
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking terrifying. I can't even relate to that. I've never experienced anything like that, obviously, and it's like, just wow. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to play another clip from Alaska Daily. This one is where the newsroom decides how they're going to cover that missing white woman. Then I'll get your reaction right after.
But maybe there's an angle here. 2 women disappeared, 1 white, 1 you pick.
A comparison piece?
I'm down with that.
Me too.
I like it. Follow the money.
I'll dig into how much is being spent to find Henley.
Oh, same with Jade.
I need hard numbers, then it's a story.
I like this idea. Overdue.
It was pretty much your idea.
Was it?
Tale of 2 searches.
Let's do it.
All right, Larry, so what are your thoughts on the tale of 2 searches, them dividing up the resources?
Oh, man. Yeah, tale of 2 searches. My initial reaction was it really warmed my heart because, when we look at big bad media, it shows that there's people, there's some good hearts in the newsroom. And I was really happy that I can't remember his title, the guy in charge, right? I was just really happy that he had a heart to say, you know what, this is important, let's do it. So I see the warmth, I see the care, and I see the love and the equity just in the room. And how do you do it? How do you push it out? And that leader, he figured out a way. And I think, honestly, he realized the power of the white woman's story. And you almost maybe have to tag it on. Again, maybe you can tell me if it works like this, but I'm imagining maybe tagging the Native woman's story onto another story that has all this white woman momentum might be able to get us some visibility. And he could still get that initial story out as well.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I'm glad you actually asked me that question because that was one of the reasons why I left NBC Bay Area. I was an anchor at NBC for a long time in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the story that really got me was Lacey Peterson, the missing white woman from Modesto. And she was later killed by Scott Peterson and her husband. She was pregnant and she went missing. And I was a transportation reporter at the time, and I anchored the primetime news on the weekends. And so my focus was primarily on transportation. But when they asked me to go off of my transportation beat and become the reporter on this story, I was just like, my gosh, this is, one, it's outside of my beat. 2, why are we devoting so much coverage to Lacey Peterson? And when I was asking my boss that the guy that you were just talking about in this newsroom in Alaska Daily, my boss made a different decision. He made a different decision. That was to continue doing the coverage. And it was interesting because the San Francisco Chronicle also questioned why the media, like my boss, were only covering white women. And they actually did an expose on I can't remember the exact number, but the tens of thousands of missing people of color that the media never covered. And one of them I remember was a Latina woman who also, like Lacey Peterson, was pregnant and went missing, and no one ever talked about that. And that was one of the kind of the decision points for me. It's like, this is just ridiculous. We need to find a better way. We need to be able to tell the stories of all people because all people, all humans have value, equal value, and we need to figure out a better way, which is one of the reasons why I started Ovis. But Dominic, what are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, I think they're, obviously we're looking at a TV show, but they're trying to kind of portray this, this sort of middle ground and sense of justice. And that's, we dehumanize things like almost without hesitation. It seems like these days, it's the media. Right. And so the media sucks. The media is tens of thousands of people working in thousands of organizations, right? Like they're human beings. And, the bulk of these individuals got into journalism to make a difference. right? They wanted to, inform people. They wanted to, uncover the truth, like Ovis, right? Like, there's that commitment to finding what really happened, what's really going on here. What don't we know about that we need to know about as a society? And so, we just can't write things off wholesale either.
That's true.
That's what I get from it. Like, there's people trying to make stuff happen.
Well, and I love the fact that there are people pushing against the machine, right? And I have plenty of my reporter friends and journalist friends who are always pushing against the machine. They're every day striving to do the right thing. And this machine, this ratings and clicks business model, the machine makes people compromise on some of their values, or it's just, even if they never compromise on their values, they don't get to do the stories that they want to do because of the ratings and clicks machine. They will do the best job with the story that they're assigned to do, and they'll do an amazing job, but they're missing their stories that just go untold, like all the native Alaskans in this case, that don't get covered because the machine, the ratings and clicks machine doesn't work for them.
No,
So anyway,
it's hilarious.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's almost like as if there are no Native Americans in the United States.
Right.
I mean, when do you ever see coverage?
Right. That's a
Do
good
they live
point.
here still? I'm not sure. I think they do. Well, I think there's a lot of them, but we know nothing. Like, nobody even says anything about it, right? I mean, I feel the same way about North Korea too. Like, we hear about them, but then in another way, it's like, why aren't we talking about this? This is an entire country that's basically enslaved. Okay,
Right.
Like they cannot leave. They have no freedom. Very tiny, percent of a percent of a ruling class and lackeys, and everybody else is basically like starving to death slowly. We don't talk about it unless it's like sexy nuclear war, which is sick that's sexy, but it is, unfortunately, And so North Korean bomb test, right? We hear about it. But
that's always what we hear about. That's the narrative, right?
That's the type of thing. I mean, if we were to hear anything about Native Americans in this country, it would probably be because there were murders
or gambling,
right? Or gambling problem of some kind, right?
Yeah, some sort of casino thing. That would be the two narratives. Yeah.
A lot of untold stories. If there was only something out there that was going to tell these stories.
Oh, Ovis. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking.
Larry, go ahead.
I like what Ovis is doing because as I'm listening to Dominic, I'm hearing maybe the appetite for Native Americans, the appetite for people of color on TV is not there. And that's been delivered over time. And so did the media, whoever they are, did they create this appetite? I think they were really implicit in enforcing the importance of white over other. I think all these things, but how do we get the appetite? Who's going to do it? Who's not going to bow to the pressures of clicks and ratings and sponsors and all that to continue more of the same? I wish there was someone who would.
Well, the great news is we're not, what Ovis is doing is we're incentivizing truth telling. We're just removing the entire business structure out of it. So there's no reason to have to bow down to ratings and clicks because they don't matter. They don't play a role in our business model. Our business model is incentivizing truth telling, which we'll talk about in a second. I'm going to go back to the Alaska Daily TV series. What's interesting is after the newsroom decides that they were going to kind of divide the resources, they send one of the reporters out to find out how much money the state of Alaska is spending on finding the Texas woman who fell off the boat. And it turns out they're spending nearly $1 million on helicopters and search planes and boats. But hardly any money on the Native Alaskan women, the women who paid the taxes for finding the white girl, but nobody's finding them, and they actually paid the taxes for the state. No other issue, but that irks me as well. While when Hillary Swank, who plays reporter Elaine Fitzgerald, confronts the state commissioner about why Alaska is spending so much money on this woman, the answer the commissioner gives surprised me, and it's pretty revealing. So roll that tape, please.
Commissioner, one more question.
Are you just opposed to pressers?
A little bit, yeah. It feels impersonal. Real quick, were you aware that while the search for Henley is going on, there's another search underway for Jade Jacobs? She's an Alaskan Native woman who went missing 2 days ago.
I don't know anything about that.
But if $1 million was spent to find Jade and all the other missing Alaskan Native women, the state would go bankrupt, right?
I know what you're trying to do here, but it's not our fault.
It's not your fault.
We're spending all this money to find the girl.
Then whose fault is it?
Yours.
What do you mean?
Look around. Whenever a white girl goes missing, my phone blows up with you people hounding me to find out what's being done to find her. Gotta wonder why there's so much pressure to find Henley, but not so much to find that other girl.
Jade Jacobs.
I think you know why. Your people will hold us accountable if we don't find Henley, but if we don't find Jade, not so much.
Okay, I did not expect that answer. I don't know about you, but I didn't expect that answer. Larry, what's your reaction to that?
Okay, mine completely blown. I was walking right up with the reporter. I was like, yeah, we're going to nail this politician to the wall, right? I was standing, I'm like, yeah, get her, hold her accountable, not accountable, but get her, right? And then the politician switched it at the last second, and I couldn't argue. I said,
Yeah.
oh, wow. And if that's the case, I'm looking in the wrong direction, so that's very interesting. Love to know what you would have to say, but I wouldn't think what she said would be the case, because it just wouldn't.
It was just, like I said, I was like, whoa, didn't expect that. And quite frankly, she's dead on. Dominic, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's the follow the line of interest, right? Follow to where people care the most. And businesses like that, right? There's so many things that are presented to you that you have to prioritize. And politics is even more like that. There's a million problems to solve, even in the smallest local political scenario. And, she's got to go where the attention is, because no matter what's the right thing to do, if she follows something that nobody cares about, puts resources and time and energy into it, she's not going to get the goody two-shoes award.
Right.
She's going to get the boot.
Right. And, the impact of that, though, is that now all these resources are spent on one person, which means it starves the resources for other legitimate folks as well. And I think the message that sends is, if you're a perpetrator of people of color, you want to kidnap another person of color, you're going to be able to get away with it, right? Because all the money is going to be spent on the white woman, but not on the Asian woman, the Latina woman, the Native American woman, or even a white guy, quite frankly. I think that's the impact that the media has by starving resources that could go to equally important people. And, one of the things, you might want to ask yourself, is there any empirical proof that the media favors covering missing white women over another gender? A Northwestern University study in 2016 found that evidence. The study is called The Missing White Woman Syndrome, an empirical analysis of race and gender disparities in online news coverage of missing people. It was published in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology. And the fellow that conducted this was Zach Summers. He conducted this research. And what he found after reviewing more than 1,500 articles from major media outlets was that nearly 50% of those articles featured missing white women, while missing white men made up only 17% of the articles. Missing Hispanic females made up 14%, missing Black women 9%, and Black men only 3%, and the rest are other folks. So one other thing, remember Gabby Petito? That was she was another missing white woman. She was a household name when she disappeared in August of last year for about a month, and for weeks the media went berserk over her disappearance until she was later found strangled, police believe, by her husband. Not long ago, CNN kind of did some self-reflecting on the media's coverage of missing white women, and here's some of their reflection. Here's a soundbite.
This isn't saying that Gabby Petito is not important. What it is saying is that there's an overrepresentation in media when white women go missing, and an underrepresentation in media when Black, brown, and indigenous women go missing. So, for example, Lacey Peterson, Natalie Holloway, Chandra Levy, these are all household names. We can all think of their faces when we say their names, but I'm willing to bet that no one watching or listening can name one single Black or brown woman who went missing who became a household name. And there are comparable examples of young beautiful middle-class women where every other factor is aligned with, say, Gabby Petito, but the only differentiator is race. So, for example, Nikki Fitz, 32-year-old mother in California, went missing in 2016. How many people know her name? Her 2-year-old daughter went missing with her. That child is still missing to this day. So we're talking about representation.
Representation matters. I mean, it was just kind of going back to what Larry said. You felt that you were less than, right? Because all you saw on TV was somebody else. So representation matters. What are your thoughts about what you just said in addition to that?
It's surprising. It's surprising that it still goes on. We've known that there have been issues for a long time, but there's still some perpetuating issues. I think that I remember reading a while ago that it's about this white woman syndrome. It becomes entertaining. It's more like a saga, and I think for the longest time, I had a disdain for the news because they make money, it seems, on the things that will stress us out or the things that are like, oh my God. And that's why we come to the news for the, oh my God, not for how is my neighborhood wonderful, how are the people doing in my life, but it's those things that are going to like pull on the stress part of ourselves or could make us just kind of frantic or nervous or all these things. And so, it becomes entertaining, it becomes a saga. That gets people coming back and back and back, and it sort of feeds this money machine, which keeps everything lopsided. And I'm just really glad maybe we're in a position now because media is extremely powerful because it governs what we think, and what I think you think becomes what our neighborhood, our society does. So it starts at the individual level. So I think we have an opportunity to give a different message. Other things are important, and then I think maybe when we do this, society can maybe start to change from the bottom up. But hopefully, and that's I'm excited about aspects like that.
Well, with Ovis, you kind of talked about the bottom up. That's what we're trying to do here. Is we're giving power back to the people, as I think you've said, right, Larry, where the people get to decide the news, right? We allow people to upvote stories, and they decide what the journalists are going to cover. And it's thousands, millions of people that decide versus a few people at the top making the decision for the rest of the people. So the people control the news instead of the news controlling the people. We give people their power back. Dominic, do you have anything to add to that?
No, just that it's the whole idea of it like becoming a kind of a self-perpetuating thing. You know, Larry's comment, it's like, what the hell is wrong with us sometimes? Like, how does the human mind just like create these patterns? I don't know. You just think we'd be craving for something different, but it was just these things just need a voice. They need a voice, and I'm confident that once that starts happening, like at Ovis, and we know there are other progressive things in development, and they're coming. I think it's going to be a like an awakening almost. I've said for a while that we're in the information age, but not really. Like, it hasn't started. Someone just turned on a fire hose of information called the internet, but it's mostly trash. It's extremely difficult to navigate. You can't hardly trust anything. You have to become like practically a PhD researcher to figure out like if the information you're reading is even believable, and you got to like get into freaking study makeups and like, my God, right? Where's the information? We're not using it. Politics is a great example. We're still making like decisions based off almost like witchcraft shit. We have data. We have hard data. 99% of the problems we face are really not debatable. They're pretty straightforward if you're willing to just look at the information and go with it. Say, oh, okay.
But you have to get the right information. You have to get the right information. So that's another issue that we'll solve in a different podcast, how Ovis does that. But yes, I agree. We have this fire hose of information. Not a lot of it you can trust. And what we're trying to do is build a place where where the news and information is trustworthy, it's verified, and it's accountable. I want to thank both of you, Larry, for being a Pioneer Club member, and Dominic for being part of the leadership team. Thank you very much for this, for the time you spent with us and your reaction to everything. And Tracy, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thanks, Linton. That does it for us on the Ovis podcast. Be sure to follow us on social. You can find those links by visiting our website at ovisnews.com. I'm Tracy Grant. Thanks for watching.